Yeah.
Okay. So the Parks Operations Quarterly Report. This is the first quarterly report that we're having from Parks. It's really comprehensive. Next time it will come with a short presentation like we had from Sport and Rec, but at this stage Parks staff are quite busy with the work they're doing during lockdown and prepping the parks and things. So that's not available today. Andrew, would you like to introduce the report?
Sure thing. Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Nice. And I'm really hoping that all of my team are online as well, but I can't see at this point. So thanks, Sarah. Yeah, this is the first of what will be a quarterly report. Because it takes quite a bit of time to compile, it's kind of a little bit out of date, but to be able to provide you with up-to-date information on things like volunteer numbers for a quarter, etc., we need a bit of time to compile that. So it's broken down into the areas of activity that we have and the responsible managers whom will be available to answer any questions you might have. And it covers off, as you can see, those key activity areas of our daily operations, some of the more significant capital works programs, and the growing area, of course, of community participation. That's probably all from me. I was going to get the guys to introduce their own sections briefly, but it's a question for you, Sarah. Would you like the guys to talk through their own individual section and then take questions on those sections, or just see if there's questions at the end?
What we might do for this report, given the online nature of it, is actually take the report as read. It's really thorough and it's got some really good news in it. But what we might do is actually just have some questions from councillors. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So that's it from me. Over to you guys.
Great. Pauline's got a question, and then Yanni, then Tim.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a lovely report, and I look forward to being back in the chamber when we can have a more detailed presentation from you guys, because this is for me, this is the really good stuff that, well, council does heaps of good stuff. This is really great stuff. My question is actually about the big belly bins, and particularly concerning a local park in my area, St Albans Park, which I think is the busiest park in Christchurch, even though you think it might be the Cashmere Valley Reserve. But we're still having trouble with overflowing bins there. The other two bins have been removed, and it's just down to the one. So I see that you say there on page 18 that you're waiting for the data to be collected to inform changes, and I know you said that the report is a little bit dated by the time we get it. Has that data gathering been completed yet, or is that still an ongoing piece of work?
Al, are you online? Are you able to talk to big belly bins? Sorry, smart bins.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Al's online. Okay.
Oh, sorry, yes, the smart bins. Well, the thing is, we can actually get a memo about this if you like, but we're still, I'm getting a lot of, complaints about the rubbish down there at the park, because it seems to be it's a capacity issue, and the smart bins should be requesting them to be emptied. So I have brought this up at community board as well repeatedly. Sure. Is there an opportunity, if the bin is not coping, to actually have another bin put in, or is it just one?
Yeah, look, well, there's two aspects to that. One, the contractors and ourselves, we can see the fullness of the bin online all day, every day.
Yeah.
So in theory, it should never get to the overcapacity level. Now, in saying that, part of the deliberate process has been to install the first wave of bins and monitor, and then there are another wave of smart bins coming. And we have been collecting and collating feedback directly from elected members and members of the community, and then we address those. So the installation process is only about 50%.
Andrew, you've dropped out sound-wise.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, that was better. Back again.
Sorry. Yeah, I have had a few techo issues. What I was saying, I'm not sure how much you got, but we're 50%.
Disappeared.
I can hear him.
I can hear him.
Oh,
Yeah, I can.
that's
Yeah,
weird.
it's fine.
I couldn't at all.
Yeah, you're fine, Andrew.
So,
Okay.
okay, you keep going then.
I can hear it as well.
Thank you. So we're 50, just to recap, we're 50% through the rollout program roughly, probably a little ahead of that. We are monitoring that data. We are hopeful, we welcome the feedback because we get the best information from the community of where the additional bins need to be put in. But just to reassure that we watch and monitor, and I think there's some examples in the report of what that looks like. In saying that, sometimes there's a few technical issues with the messaging coming out of the bins, but nothing untoward. We're aware of the feedback about St Albans Park, and we'll be addressing that along with some of the others that have come through as high use, high need.
Yeah. Oh, that's really helpful response. Thanks, Andrew. So you're 50% through the rollout program and you're still collecting the data, and when they're full, we should be getting in.
I've just been updated by text. We're 70% through
75, it says in the report. Yeah. Thank you.
Just to add to that, actually, on the bins, because I know it's a hot topic, in terms of removal of the existing static bins, we're going to implement a communication program where we're going to probably end up putting stickers on the bins, on the existing bins, before they're removed, advising them of the program, when the bin's likely to be removed and why, and positive messaging about, taking your rubbish home and all that sort of stuff, so that, and also the ability for people to contact us if they have concerns. So we're going to slap that on the actual bin so that we get feedback from the actual users of the bins, if you like.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yanni, then Tim, then Anne, then Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you. On the bins, one of the things, I guess the most negative feedback I've had is people being able to pick up after their dogs. Are we able to consider putting in some, we do have special dog litter bins. Are we able to consider putting in some of those in some of the most popular places for the dogs? Like Hanson's Park is one that comes to mind, but there might be others that the staff are aware of.
Well, there's nothing wrong with putting dog waste in the smart bins, as long as it's in a bag, ideally. I'm not sure how else you'd get it in there. And again, we're pushing quite hard the message of take it home and use your normal red bin disposal processes. And we push that hard during COVID level 4 in particular, of course, because we don't want our staff out there unnecessarily. And they're the messages we're going to promote, Yanni, that you walked out the door with your dog, you walked out the door with the dog bag, you can walk back in the door and put it in your bin. And this is all about minimizing OPEX costs and getting better bang for the buck. So the answer is yes, we can always put more stuff in, but more stuff has to be funded, more stuff has to be renewed, more stuff has to be operationally managed. And we're really trying to steer people in a slightly different direction, which is, be more responsible.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think the other thing with this, I'm still not quite clear when this decision was made. So it was made as part of an LTP workshop, and then it was made, was there a specific resolution through the LTP? Because a number of people in the community have raised to me concern that they would have liked to have had a say on this, but they weren't aware of this being considered. So can you just explain to me what opportunity the public had to give feedback on this decision?
Well, there was essentially no explicit opportunity prior to the smart bins being put in. The decision, as you stated, was made during a workshop and taken as a saving, an OPEX saving, which is now in our budget. So the money's gone from our budget. And so the process in terms of communication and consultation with the community, we're running the program, I guess, the way that we intended, which was to implement the new bins. There have been some hiccups with bins coming out early, implement the new bins, communicate and collaborate with the community, and just quietly work our way through it. I think, to be frank, if we've said to any of the community, we're going to take your stuff away, we wouldn't have smart bins, and everyone would have said no. that's been a pretty common occurrence with bin removals up and down the country when other councils have taken bins out.
Yeah, I acknowledge that, but we've just adopted a draft community strategy which talks about involving people in our decision making. We've got a resident survey that is very damning on people's satisfaction with how we're making decisions and their ability to influence. Something as visible and as public as this in terms of a policy decision, I personally feel should have been publicly consulted on. But we are where we are. I guess the key thing is to make sure that we're monitoring any issues of concern and have processes underway to address that. Can I just ask about two other issues? One is, when is the detailed design, what's the time frame for getting detailed design for Lancaster Park? I keep having concern raised with me from the community over when they actually are going to, when we're going to approve a detailed design. I know it's been done in 2 stages, but I just think giving some clarity around the time frame for the detailed design to be finalised would be very helpful.
I'm not sure I can give you the finalised date, but the design process is about to commence. We've just resolved the issue. We had a few issues around how we resolved the reinstatement process with the heritage gates. That's now been resolved. So we're in a position now to understand how we can move forward. We've been making contact with some of the key stakeholders in the last week before lockdown, actually, about setting up those conversations. So that we're about to commence the design process. Of course, the community board gets to make the final decision on the detailed design. So typically that should be within the next 6 months.
Can we get, like, Brent Smith wrote a really excellent memo, and I appreciate things have changed. Can we just get that memo updated with the new timeframes and processes so that we can be really explicit with the community about what's happening? I think that would be really helpful.
Sure.
And just sort of on a similar vein, the Linwood Park Village remediation, which I did raise at a previous meeting recently as well, just really concerned to not understand, what's happening there. Like, the money's not sufficient. How do we get into that state? And the community's been putting up with that temporary village for so long, but can we get a coordinated approach to Linwood Park, and what's the best way to progress that? Because I do know we do have money in the LTP, even if it's at later years, around some of the things there, but it would be good to tie it all together and just have a comprehensive plan, including the remediation, so that we can just, again, say to the community, here's what we're going to do, and here's what's the plan.
Sure. I'll make sure there's a community board report update that covers both projects and process.
Is it possible just to get a memo?
There's quite a lot to get through on both projects, so I think a report is probably better, to be frank, if you want it in the public realm.
Right. And at what stage would you come back to us over Linwood Park for a budget increase?
Well, we're exploring what we can do without having to come back for a budget increase. And member of our team, Richard Gibbs, he's exploring opportunities now. So we may not need a budget increase. So we're working through that.
Okay. And what's the time frame for getting an outcome or getting a decision at the community board?
Well, we'll bring that report through to you. It'll take a couple of months by the time it goes through its report development process and approval process. So it'll be, well and truly this side of Christmas.
Right. Okay.
I think that's answered for now, Yanni. Did you have a question on a different topic?
Oh, just a final question for me was, I appreciate this report is quite high level. I think, am I correct that this covers cemeteries as well?
Yeah, it covers all our activities.
I just wondered, we've got a really good cemeteries master plan, and it's got a number of actions and landscape plans, but we don't seem to get any reporting against that. Would it be possible to get a separate report on that cemeteries plan and just have a really good understanding of the actions that have happened, that are still to happen, or that have changed?
I'd need to think about that a little bit. It is a master plan, not a development plan. The cemetery's actions are driven by the funding in the capital program. it might be, and depending on the particular communities we're working with, there are different views on the appropriateness of that master plan. It might be worthwhile providing this committee with an update, a general update on the implementation of that plan and kind of where to next. I could see Councillor Turner nodding, because I know Banks Peninsula have concerns that need to be addressed, and others may as well.
Yeah, I think that would be really useful, but I think as long as it references back to the actions that we said we were going to do, and appreciate that we may not have done some of them because they're unfunded or they may have changed, but it would be good for us to understand the rationale behind changes, or if things are lacking funding, or if had funding and not happened. So, I would welcome that. That plan is actually very detailed and does have very discrete actions and budgets attached. So I would welcome getting a report back on that.
And we'll look at the appropriateness of how that report's done, whether it could slot in as part of the next parks update, or whether it needs its own report, and the most efficient way to do that. I can probably answer that. I think it should be its own individual report. Okay. It's a very important topic, obviously.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm just aware that that's 3 additional reports from that set of questions. So.
The community board ones, I'm pretty sure the guys were drafting one anyway, so I'm not too worried about that.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Okay, I'll move on to Tim. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrew, just on 4.3 on page 22, community participation. With the long-term plan, we agreed to increase budget for the community rangers in the north and the south, because I presume the north's the same as ours. Our ranger in the south is outstanding. She's done amazing jobs. And one of the things that we wanted to do as a council was to get more community participation, which we have achieved. But then it's kind of almost too successful. That's why we've approved these extra rangers. I'm just wondering where we are at the moment with them.
We're going through the processes of getting updated position descriptions approved, getting resources in place for them, getting simple things like vehicles and so forth is quite challenging at the moment. So we're in the process of setting those roles up, and pretty hopeful we'll get them up and running before Christmas.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Anne, and then Jimmy.
Kia ora, Andrew. You're just following on from Tim. Will we get to meet them, and can you tell it? Will we know what specific sort of parts of Christchurch they'll be looking after?
No, you're not allowed to meet them. Sorry. Yes, of course you can meet them once they're employed, and they're essentially there'll be another person dedicated to what we call the South. So we'll articulate what that means in terms of wards. So there'll be one person employed to join Kerry's team over in the peninsula, and they're going to have quite a primary focus initially in the harbour, where there's a lot of unsatisfied demand. One for the South team and one for the North team. We're just modifying their position descriptions a little bit to focus more on community participation,
right.
Because that's where the opportunities lie. Yeah.
I've got a couple more questions. Just reiterating what others have said, it's a really positive, fantastic report. So thank you. The Adopt a Patch on page 23. How do people get involved in that? Is that on the website, council website?
Kate, are you online?
I am. Good morning,
kia ora, Kate.
Kia ora. Nice to see all your smiling faces.
Well, not in my case.
So the Adopt a Patch is part of somebody else's part of the report, I think, is it? someone else, Andrew?
No, that's me driving this, sorry, and trying to get the community park guys once we get our new ranges in place. What we want to do is we want to work in a different way with our minor capital in particular, particularly around planting. So we want to start a program which is, kind of adopt your patch to get a stronger connection between locals and their local park. And start conversations with them around some of minor renewals things. So instead of us going in there and saying, our data tells us you need a new seat, actually talk to the community and say, well, what do you guys want us to spend this money on in your park? So it's a slightly different approach to sort of minor non-safety driven asset renewals. To build that community connection and what was talked about before about community-led decision making. Because we can assume a lot, but it's better if we find ways for local communities and people that are really interested in their local parks to tell us what they would like to see done first. With the funding that you guys have already approved, so not to try and drive more and more funding.
Yeah. Andrew, I think one of the things that's in there with the Adopt a Patch thing is it says there's a group of local residents who volunteer their time to become a caretaker of gardens in the Sumners and Taylor's mistake areas. If there are other people in other areas across the city wanting to adopt a patch and take over a bit of maintenance and those kind of things, how do they go about doing that?
Well, that's really that relationship with that community partnership style ranger.
So do they get in contact with the community board governance team who'll put them in contact? Or?
Yeah, they can contact anyone. It'll filter through probably initially until we're up and running properly through to Kate's team. And Sarah and Kate's team will communicate with them, find out what they need to do, get someone down there, make sure it's all safe, etc., and away we go.
Great.
If I can just leap in there, Sarah, we're doing a bit of proactive work around our heritage gardens at the moment. We've just recently got Friends of Rising Home up and running. We're doing the same thing with Avesbury. So they're, going out, doing a simple thing like a letter drop a kilometre out from these parks, which is a pretty cheap way to get in touch with people and saying, are people interested in forming a Friends of group, seems to be being very, very effective at this point.
That's great. Okay, and we've got some quite long existing Friends of Edmund's Petrie Gardens and stuff too in that space.
Can I just have one more question? Sorry, I know I've taken a bit of time.
Last one and then it's Jimmy.
Okay, traffic management plan for Napunawai, Andrew. I'm assuming there'll be involvement in locals in that process.
Absolutely. So they've just been finalising some of the movement data. They've been doing lots of capturing over the winter months in particular with all the sporting activity, and they've also just drafted a parking layout specifically for the AMP show. That's where they're up to with the process. The next step is to get all that collected data on BAU, if you like, hockey and athletics and all that sort of stuff, and start the conversation with the locals about how we address potential future demand driven by Netzel, etc.
That's great. Thanks so much. Jimmy.
Thank you. Andrew, I have 2 questions. First one on page 18, 4.1.10. Even you reply, answered some councillors, I'm still concerned because based on your information, you emphasize smart bin implementation has been tried in some of the popular park. But I just want to know regarding to the quantity the staff considered to allocate or distribute to those sports park or local park, etc., like 1 or 2, this smart bin, how to assess all those ones? Because like in the southwest or Hornby area, like Waikola Park, Warren Park, etc., the feedback they always thought is short of sufficient number of the smart bin allocate in that area. So I just don't know what's all the criteria to allocate the number of the smart bin.
So it's the initial criteria, Jimmy, were based on information around how full all the static bins were from our contractor.
Yeah.
And just bearing in mind that the initial approach was, might have been 1 or potentially 2 bins, depending on that data. And now we're monitoring, and I think you can see in the report, the process for monitoring, as I said earlier, is live.
Yes.
And it will be a genuine demand driven. I do feel that initially we've been dealing with people's reaction, which is natural to something has gone, therefore there will be a problem. What we're using is daily data now on fullness of bins, frequency of having to go and empty, and also understanding the amount of loose litter that might be lying around. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I'm concerned
Again.
because short of sufficient lost the number of the smarter bins. So that's why the kind of the residents, they just throw the rubbish, spread over to the park, etc. And also the community or staff or engage with contractor need to tidy up, maybe waste more kind of the cost. Yeah.
Thanks, Jimmy. Hey, Andrew, you mentioned earlier about some communications, some more proactive communications on the bin situation. Are they coming out soon? And will some of those include sort of, some signage at the parks, those kind of things?
Al, are you online? I'm not sure if you're online.
Yes.
Oh, you are. Thanks. Sorry. Yep. Cool. Do you want to just add a little bit more to the bin topic?
Yeah. Apologies for not being able to sign in earlier. It was systems driven, and also I wanted to make sure Andrew got a chance to answer all the questions. Second round of communication driven off the back of data that we collect through the new smart bin system. But also what we want to do is, instead of throwing a lot of signs up in parks, I think what we want to do is perhaps hit some of the we still have 400 static or old style bins that are out in the parks. We haven't removed those, and we've just paused a little bit. But before we finish that part of the program, it'll give us an opportunity to perhaps put some stickers on there with communications regarding, take it home. Also, what we've learned from the smart bin. It's the one side of a two-headed coin. There's, in addition to the loose litter that Jimmy mentioned, these smart bins are hopefully by design going to take care of a lot of that loose litter, blowing through those old style bins like they used to. So the new, the next wave of communications will probably follow up with an additional news line, which was really well received, the first one that we put out, in addition to maybe not signage, but stickering those static bins before we take them away.
That's great. Thanks a lot for that. Are there any further questions on the parks report?
Sorry, I have one more question.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you. On page 21, 4.2.2, regarding to the skate park, during the long-term plan, staff particularly mentioned a moment in the market short of those designer or planner. So now we have quite a few skate parks in citywide waiting for the design. So I just don't know a moment whether this situation has been changed or not.
No, there's excuse me. There's no change, Jimmy, from the decisions that were made in the LTP. If you're referring in particular to Waikola Park, the resolution was to address that, through the annual plan. And so we're still working towards that.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Okay, any further questions?
Yeah.
Sam.
Oh, cool. Hey, thanks, Al and Andrew, for running through that bin stuff. There's obviously still a couple of issues to work through. Just one thing, just so I'm clear. So the ones we haven't removed at the moment, is there a possibility if the demand continues in those smaller parks that we'll actually retain them?
Do you want to go, Al, or do you want me to go? Yeah.
You might polish up whatever I put down. We're looking at it with an open mind at this point. The thing that we have to critically manage is that they need to go for me to be able to stay in budget as part of the savings that you captured earlier. So we'll certainly. I think what we will do, and we have provision for additional smart bins to be added after we collect data and basically find out where these needs exist. Certainly not, I think it would be a step backwards if we left these old static bins because they just have too many other problems. They overflow easily. You know, one pizza box will take them out in lots of instances. And they also disperse loose litter through wind and vermin, you know, scattering through them, things of that nature. So I'd prefer not to, but anything's possible. We're looking at it with an open mind.
I'll just add to that. One of the benefits of the smart bin approach is that, as opposed to static bins, is the contractor can be very efficient in terms of when they how they use their resource. So we can install a smart bin with a capital cost of about $800, or if I got, no, 1,000, I think.
8,000.
Yeah, $8,000, but it doesn't necessarily drive up our OPEX costs because we can monitor how full those bins are. So I think the reality is, Sam, we're dealing with people's perception of demand a little bit, which is understandable. But if we do need to, you know, over the next year, just increase the number of smart bins to manage that community expectation, it does have the benefit of not driving up OPEX costs, whereas leaving static bins in place, the only way the contractor can respond is we have to pay them to turn up whether the bin's empty or not.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Completely get that. I guess where I'm coming from is if there are bins and parks that we weren't planning on putting another bin in, if there's enough demand, I'm thinking if you're in my area, we could potentially look at scheduling in a one-off smart bin. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, rather than retaining static bins, correct.
Yeah. And just the only other one, and it's a wee bit cheeky, but before this was all done, our community board chipped in some money to put some bins in, smart bins. Would someone be able to chat offline with Mary Ann, our governance manager, because if they've been rolled out across the city, we're kind of thinking perhaps our own funds could be used elsewhere if it was already in a parks budget.
Yeah, fine.
It sounds like a good conversation to have.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, are there any further questions?
Yes, please.
Aaron.
Yeah, Andrew, I back up Yanni's points that were raised earlier around the bins, and some of us have had a lot of feedback around it because there's still a lot of people out there that believe rubbish is core council business. So could all bin decisions going forward be made by either community boards or council? So the public have got someone they can point the finger at and go, why did you take away my bin?
Sure, yeah. So by that you mean any future bin installations that post the monitoring, you'd like to see a report to the community boards prior?
Well, installations and removals, any removals at all that exist need to go to either council or community boards. And I believe the last decision should have been an LTP one or an annual plan one.
Okay.
There's still a lot of people not happy with the bin removal. They're not into the behaviour change. It's just not where they're at.
Okay, hang on, before you answer, Andrew,
sure.
The process-wise, that's not a decision for now. At the moment, it sits in a staff delegation. So what we would need is some advice on the implications of that before a decision was made to change the delegations. So if we're able to get some advice on the implications of staff writing a report every time a bin needed changing, then that would be really useful before we make a decision to do that. Is that all right,
No,
Andrew?
It's not changing the bin, but when we change
Aaron,
our
it's a
core
change whether
council
it goes
business
in or
away
out.
from taking away rubbish, the public deserve a say. And as the public's representatives, we should be held accountable when they're not happy.
That's fine. We'll just get some advice on what happens there. So
Yeah,
currently
sure.
it's a staff delegation.
Yeah, sure. One thing to be mindful of is there's the number of bins, and it's quite different, obviously, when it goes to zero, but there's also capacity. And Al, correct me if I'm wrong, but the capacity of a smart bin is, well, actually, I can't even guess. Al, what's the capacity of a smart bin compared to a static?
Andrew, it's roughly 6 to 10 times the capacity. It depends on, obviously, the type of rubbish that's put in it.
Right. So I think it's probably important to reiterate that message that it's about, we're trying to target our service to meet the demand. In terms of where we are now, given that we still have, I think Al mentioned 400 odd static bins in place that are due to come out, if there was a desire from elected members for that to become an elected member decision, we're going to have to ask for some money back operationally for the bins that stay in. So we'd have to do that through the annual planning process and leave probably, cop the cost this year and readdress it through the annual plan process.
Okay, so what I think we might do here is, Andrew, we'll have a chat after this meeting
Sure.
and with Aaron as well, and get a handle on what advice would be needed if we were going to make a decision to do that. Because there's a range of different things that will need to be taken into consideration, and some information that might help in that. So if we have a chat about that afterwards, and we'll get Aaron involved in that as well. Yeah.
So just for general consumption, and I totally appreciate that you guys get contacted directly a lot. Overall, through our CSR process, we've had a pretty significant reduction in complaints about litter in parks since the smart bins have been installed.
Yeah,
so
I think
before any decision gets made, I'd like the opportunity to bring all the information and put it in front of you guys.
Yeah, and I think that's the type of information that I was thinking of, as well as maybe a couple of examples of the old bins, the amount of resource they took to empty, and the actual demand that was on those would be quite useful, because I think you're right, Andrew, that perception may be quite different to reality when it comes to some of these. But I think getting that information will be really useful. I think we'll move to Leanne and then Yanni.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I did want to intervene on this. This is a Zoom meeting. Staff delegation matters are for the council, not for committees of the whole. And I think it's really important that we get detailed advice on this. Rubbish bins have been an interest to me for a very long time for a number of reasons. And, I just think that we actually do need to know some facts and figures before we make any sort of change to the delegations that are in place. It's all very well to say that you want people involved in the decision making, but I think it's much more important sometimes to explain to people why a particular change in focus is being undertaken. But that has to be done through a council decision, not by a committee of the whole. So I'm happy to join in that conversation with you, Andrew, but I don't want us to proceed with this until we're back around the table talking to each other and getting that briefing in person, and looking at how we better communicate perhaps with the public rather than presenting it as a simplistic thing. So there you go.
Thanks so much. Okay, Yanni.
Sorry, I just wanted to be clear, we're not stopping removing bins until we get the information, or we are? So
at the moment, Andrew?
So we're not removing any static bins at the moment. We weren't
Well,
going
obviously
to.
because we're in the lockdown. Yeah.
No. But we're not intending to remove the static bins until we start the second wave of smart bin installation. Okay, but we need to have this offline conversation.
So we had a really good memo that came through that had all the list of the ones that were being removed. Is it possible just to get an update to understand the ones where they still have bins?
Yeah, we can provide. The project manager should be able to provide an update of what's happened today.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the other thing was I just wanted to check, like, in terms of the next stage of the process, is there an ability to consult with our community?
I think that was
what we were discussing just then, Yanni.
Yeah.
So we're going to get some information together.
We'll get options around that when it comes back.
Not necessarily a report, but we're going to get some advice to start with. And I'm going to work with Aaron and Leanne and Andrew on that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'd welcome that. I think I'd be really interested in too whether there was any audit issues raised with how this decision was made. But I guess that's a separate process, a separate committee, maybe audit and risk. But yeah, thank you.
No disrespect to Aaron, but this is a council one, so I just like to deal with it first, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it with all of the councillors. Thank you.
Yep.
No disrespect taken. It is simplistic.
Well, I can't see you, Aaron, so I don't know whether you're laughing or not.
I'm never laughing. I take this deadly seriously.
Okay, let's move on. Are there any further questions? Yanni, you can take your hand down now. Any further questions on the Parks report? If not, I just want to say thanks, Andrew. I know that the nature of these reports is while they hold a huge amount of really good, really thorough, and actually a lot of really positive information about the sheer amount of work that is happening in our parks area. The nature of these types of sessions is that councillors will tend to ask questions on things they're not sure about or they have concerns about rather than pointing out the stuff they do. And so I'd like to say a big thanks because there's a huge amount of work gone into the report and that our park staff do. So thank you very much, and to the team for that.
Sure, thank you. And given that it's the first report, very happy to receive any feedback of how it can be modified or finessed to better suit the information that you need.
That's great. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm happy to move the receipt. Do I have a seconder? Sam? And do we have any debate? No, in that case, I will put the report.
Sarah, I was just going to say, yeah, it was only really briefly, just one good thing out of the rubbish bin stuff so far is I've had local residents raise it with me, and that Andrew and his team have been able to resolve them pretty quickly. So we probably shouldn't get too lost in that. But what I'd be really keen to see is if there are parks where we're getting rid of them altogether and there is still demand, that we look at a long-term solution. So, I mean, it's been a difficult discussion over Zoom, but I still think that we shouldn't be too hard on Andrew and the team. They've actually done quite a good job so far, and they're responding to community needs.
Thanks. Tim?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I really support the team on this, and any change, isn't perfect, but the smart bins are a really good way forward. And if people do have to walk a wee bit further in their parks to deliver their rubbish into a smart bin, well, so be it. They've actually walked to the park or whatever. I think it's a really good way forward, and I think we should be really positive. I think we should also wait for Andrew to bring the factual information rather than the phone calls we get about people complaining. And when we get those phone calls, I explain to them what we're trying to achieve here, rather than saying, "Oh, bloody council." I think it's a really good way forward. And to have those old bins just as we have them, everyone's seen them with one pizza box in them, and they just don't work. So I do think we've got to be a wee bit more open-minded and supportive of staff and our own council with regards to this. And as the other one about the dog poo, etc., I walk my dog every morning. There's one bin in the 4K route I do. If it does its business beforehand, great. And if it doesn't, I carry it home. We've got to take responsibility, self-responsibility for what we do. And if people aren't willing to do that, then that's a real shame. And so much for the climate change emergency. We're all going to be in the water anyway. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, thanks to Andrew and the team for the report. I think these reports coming regularly are incredibly helpful and very, very useful. I'd also acknowledge Yanni for raising the cemeteries master plan in questions, and to Andrew, thanks for raising those particular Banks Peninsula matters. There's definitely a need for a partial review of the appropriateness and the implementation of that cemeteries master plan. Parts of it are really good, as have been noted, but parts of it are in need of consideration of a refresh or perhaps some further thinking. And I'd welcome that additional report that was referred to in the answer to Yanni's questions coming sooner rather than later when the opportunity is there. Councillors will be very aware of the submissions from the Akaroa Cemeteries Group to various long-term plan and annual plan processes over the years. And there's also the eco-cemeteries issue, which has been raised particularly as regards Diamond Harbour, but obviously is far wider than that as well. It's worth bearing in mind that the Cemeteries Master Plan was adopted in 2013, 2 years after the earthquakes, when both residents and I imagine council at that time had far more pressing issues top of mind than the way that we manage our cemeteries. So certainly welcome that report coming when there's the opportunity and further consideration there. I'd also acknowledge the focus with the additional resource on community partnerships and participation, particularly around Littleton Harbour. A huge focus on community planting, not only around the harbour but other locations across the city. Of course, planting is only the beginning. There's a need for ongoing maintenance once planting has taken place, and certainly welcome the additional focus that we've heard about in this meeting today. So thanks for the report, and thanks for really fulsome answers to some of the great questions as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the report. I do want to acknowledge that the maintenance of the cemeteries has improved, and this has kind of been an ongoing issue where it seems to go up and down. But I think I just want to acknowledge the work that staff have done to improve the maintenance of our cemeteries. I think that is important to acknowledge. The critical thing is that when we agree to plans as a council at a governance level, we just need to have oversight of what's being done in accordance with those plans or what's changed. So I welcome getting that fuller, more detailed report back on the cemeteries master plan, accepting that things have changed since 2013. The issue with the rubbish bins that I have is that really we should be focused on, we've just adopted a draft community strategy that talks about working with people. We should work with our community on what we're trying to achieve rather than do things to our community. I think if you look at the rubbish bin issue, that's really given our resident surveys satisfaction around people feeling involved and included in council decision making. It's a classic issue that we should have gone out with a consultation and an engagement with our community to explain what we were trying to achieve and what we were aiming to do and work with them. So, I welcome the kind of temporary pause. I welcome the opportunity to have a conversation, hopefully with our community, about how we're doing that, because I think everyone wants to reduce the amount of litter in our city. We all want to keep Christchurch beautiful. We all want people to pick up their dog do. But it's just how we do it, I think, is of real concern, particularly in this particular case. So I look forward to getting the information back, and I acknowledge the work that our parks unit is doing also, especially with the lockdown. Obviously, a lot of our parks are being well used in local neighbourhoods, but also there is a requirement to make sure that things like playgrounds had a bit of tape and a bit of signage. So just want to acknowledge the COVID lockdown impact on our park staff and thank them for the work that they've been doing to keep us safe.
Thanks, Yanni. Anne.
Kia ora, thank you, and a fantastic report and wonderful work that's being done. And I think the strong message coming through is that whole focus on community involvement and connecting them to their local parks and reserves. That's a strong message that I get from this anyway, and I think that's incredibly important in strengthening. I think it's all about relationships, and I know we all appreciate the incredible work the rangers do in building those relationships and getting people involved in plantings and things. So I look forward to the 3 new people coming on board and the work that they will do. But this report's so good, and I'm assuming that it goes to community boards because it really should be, I think, looked at specifically at a community board level rather than just sort of being part of the big tin can somewhere. So hopefully that will happen. So thanks for the work.
Thanks, Anne. Leanne.
I just wanted to make the point that a particular occasion when I came across a decision that had been made in relation to the rubbish tins, and I didn't want to spend all my time debating rubbish tins, but the staff were incredibly open to the conversation about whether that was an appropriate location for one of the smart bins. And it makes sense that in areas where people literally go and can, or go in a car and can leave and take their rubbish with them, that's a completely different situation than somebody who's perhaps just buying some stuff in town, going and sitting in Victoria Park. Obviously, I've been walking around Hagley Park over the last few days more than usual and have actually particularly noticed rubbish tins. There's one that's completely full in the middle of the park. It's not a smart bin. The two smart bins, they're fine. So I just think that the smart bin approach is definitely the way to go. It makes a massive difference in terms of the capacity for the organisation to do the things that it really needs to be getting on and doing. Those dumb bins, let's call them that, they do encourage people to continue to put rubbish there even when they are full. And I always remember the photograph that I saw on Facebook where an overflowing bin, there were beer bottles and everything on the ground and things that were broken. And the comments on Facebook were largely, you know, damn council, they don't do their job, you know, this is the council's fault. Not one person mentioned the fact that idiots who keep putting stuff near a bin when it's already overflowing are actually the one that's contributing to the problem. So I think that local communities are now starting to say, well, actually, we need to contribute ourselves to how our communities look. And they'd much rather have a large bin. I know in New Brighton it has gone down a treat to have that there rather than these overflowing bins. So I just think that the council staff are doing a brilliant job. But look, if people do have issues, then they are incredibly open to resolving them and finding solutions. And I think that's the best thing.
Thank you. Okay, no further debate.
Oh, if I may just add a couple of bits.
Sorry, I couldn't see your hand up.
Oh, that's all right.
That's fine. Yep.
That's okay. I've got a sore shoulder. Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for your work. And I think the report as a first report is great. Just on the rubbish bins, certainly the feedback at our community board is not that we're against the smart bins. In fact, we were the first community board to adopt the smart bins and put our own money into them because we could see the actual value in them to the community. What our board and the feedback we've had is that people weren't happy with the removal of bins without them knowing. I think there is a bit of education involved, so that can work. Maybe letting people know that there's no bin any longer in that park. There's another one that might be 2 or 3k away that they could walk to or drop it in or take it home. But we just got to let people know there are other options in the journey to retraining them. Or we could just take away the rubbish. But either way, if the community get a say, like we said earlier in this meeting, that would be good.
Thanks. Any further debate? No, in that case, I'll put that thumbs up for those who are in favour of receiving the report.
Aye.
And Aaron?
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone against, please say so. That's probably easiest. No. Any abstentions? No, I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much. And I'll now ask Councillor Davidson to close with a karakia.
Punahia te pō whiri marama. Tomokia te ao whatu tangata. Tātai ki runga, tātai ki waro, tātai ahoro. Homie, huie, taikie.
Taikie. Kia ora, thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you tomorrow for Finance and Performance.
Well done, Sarah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Well done.